Hey guys, welcome to another video on the channel. Today's video, I want to talk about my experience so far with recipes. As you saw in the intro portion of this video, the photos that I showcased there were straight out of the camera with a brand new recipe that I've been experimenting with. This recipe is by no means made by me. It's a recipe that I found from a different creator online. But right now, I want to start off with talking about my experience with recipes and how I'm using them on the Fuji X-E5. Now, when I picked up the Fuji X-E5, one of the main things that caught my attention with the camera, or at least got me into wanting to get into the Fuji system, was the film simulation and recipe ecosystem that it has. My main reason for also picking up the camera was to use this camera as more of an everyday, casual type camera. And with that, I didn't want to spend a lot of time editing photos. I wanted something that I can get a quick turnaround on, and the recipe system that Fuji has was definitely a big seller for me. The Fuji X-E5 allows you to program about 10 recipes into the camera, the 3 film simulation dial slots, and I believe 7 custom setting slots that you can use as recipes. When I got the camera, I loaded a bunch of recipes that I found either on Fuji X Weekly or on social media. I loaded about 10 recipes into the camera, and what I quickly found with that is that, well, a couple of things. One, having that many recipes in the camera just, in a sense, kind of slowed me down with my process. I found myself trying to decide what recipe to use because I just had a lot. And that just made things a little bit slower for me. You're taking photos, you're trying to consider composition and, your, of course, focal length and your camera settings, and to add in recipe choices to have to now decide which recipe to use was a little bit defeating the purpose of why I got the camera. So I decided that at most I would have 3 recipes that I would possibly use on the camera, and I mainly just stuck with the 3 slots that are given to you on the film simulation dial. The first slot on the film simulation dial, I mainly prioritize that for my everyday. That's the slot I'm going to be using the most. The second slot, I want to prioritize that for a black and white recipe, but I haven't really found a black and white recipe that I really gel with so far. If you know any black and white recipe that you think I should try, please leave it in the comments, and I'll be definitely willing to check it out. And the third slot, I want to leave that open to use as a way to try out different recipes. So whatever recipes that I'm experimenting with, maybe recipes that I'm creating myself or recipes that I found that I want to try that I found online that I want to try, I want to use the third slot for that. And then if I end up liking that, then I may move it on to the first slot, depending on how much I like the recipe, right? Or how much I plan to use the recipe. So the second thing I want to talk about in relation to recipes is actually the raw files. I've been messing around with editing some of the raw files, and I must say that it's very easy to get to a certain look or idea of style that I want to achieve with a certain photo. It's very easy to kind of get that with the raw file. I hear about the Fuji colors a lot, but I didn't really know what that meant. But I don't really have to change a lot. I think the colors are pretty much there if you shoot things correctly. I don't have to do too much work to get the colors right. So with that, that's kind of made me readjust how I plan to use this camera, at least the X-E5. And the way I've been using recipes lately is more so as a way to preview what the image can look like. Sometimes a recipe can get you to like maybe 90% or 80% of the look that you're going for. And sometimes it gets you exactly what you're looking for. That's kind of been my experience before, where sometimes I don't feel the need to edit a photo. The recipe just does the job perfectly as how I want it. There are some times where it's, the recipe looks good and it gives you that nice, good visual feedback as you're taking the photo, but some editing needs to be done, right? So I usually just adjust the raw files to get to that look that I'm going for. And also a third thing with me using this camera, I have fallen in love with using recipes, but I do like editing my photos, right? So I don't want to lose that skill. And I find that if you rely too much on, at least in my case, if I rely too much on recipes, I may lose the skill to edit photos. And I don't want to lose that. I still enjoy editing photos. So as I mentioned, the recipe that I've been using is from a creator called Ross and his JPEGs. I'm using his daily Astia recipe. It's an Astia based recipe. So far I've been enjoying it. Like I said, it gets me close to the look I want and that could change in the future, but right now it's definitely the look that I go for. I've made some slight adjustments to his recipe when I use it in the field. So the first adjustment that I made to his recipe is the grain effect. I usually have that turned off because I typically don't like grain in my photos. I feel like it muddies the photo a little bit. And if I want a grain in my photo, it's something I can easily add in post. And the next change that I made to his recipe is the dynamic range. I set that to 400. I believe he's based out in UK, so a lot of the things he shoots are pretty much cloudy day stuff. A lot of the scenes that I shoot are pretty sunny and bright. So I made an adjustment to the dynamic range to 400 to just kind of help out, have the camera help out a little bit more with preserving some of the highlights and high dynamic range type scenes. The next adjustment that I make is to the color. I dropped the color from 4 to 2, just because I was finding that it was a little bit too saturated in the scenes that I was shooting. Again, he may have set it to 4 based on how the type of scenes he's shooting, meaning cloudy day type stuff. But for my location or the things that I shoot, I just noticed that it was at 4 was just a little bit too much, so I dropped that down to 2. And clarity, I usually set that at 0. I find that if you set clarity at anything other than 0 on the Fuji camera, I'm not sure if it's all Fuji cameras, but for sure on the Fuji X-E5, if you set it to anything other than 0, it slows down the process. The camera pauses for a second when you take a shot to process the image. To me, I don't really like that, and if I want to drop clarity or increase clarity, I can, well, for sure I can drop clarity by using maybe a diffusion filter or something like that on my camera. So for me, I just keep that at 0. So that's gonna wrap it up for this section of the video. So now I'm gonna head over to San Diego and try to do some more testing with this recipe. I'm gonna show a POV of me taking some photos here and there in San Diego, and all the photos I'm gonna show are straight out of camera with no well, that's a lie. With slight edits to the JPEGs. The edits I do on the JPEGs are mainly to adjust exposure mistakes that I made in the field. But as far as color and things like that, I'm not really touching anything other than just the exposure. So yeah, let's head out to San Diego and see what we can come up with.
dun 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 dun.